let's assume that you buy a piece of property, and then you find out later on that the property is hopelessly contaminated with some horrible industrial pollutant. You didn't know about it. The guy that sold you the property is long gone. But the government wants you to pick it up, clean it up. Or you sell it to somebody else who sues you. At least if they're suing the LLC, you can say, fine, take the property, I don't care. I don't want it. The umbrella, the thing that you have to be worried about with insurance, and no aspersions on the insurance company. Insurance companies are always looking for ways not to give you coverage. I do a lot of real estate. These are the cases that I've tendered to insurance companies and had a no. Real estate agent is not covered when they're selling their own property, even though they're selling their own property under their broker's name. No coverage. Real estate agent is not covered when they're selling a business opportunity because all they are allowed to do is sell residential real estate. The point is, this one too. Guy sends a demand letter to me, I send a nasty letter back to him, I don't hear from anything from 6 months, and then all of a sudden a lawsuit comes up. I send the lawsuit off to the insurance carrier and say, you need to defend this guy. And they write back and say, we discovered that there was a demand letter sent 6 months ago and you never told us about the demand letter. So we think we don't have coverage. And I said, well, fine, we'll just sue you too. They decided to give coverage, but they're always looking for ways to not give coverage. An insurance policy is a written contract between you and the insurance company. How many people have ever read their insurance policy? Nobody, because they're incomprehensible. I don't even read them. I don't understand what the hell they're saying. But it's a contract. That's what the court says. The court says this is what you agreed to when you agreed to pay this much money, and this is what the insurance company said. Now, when you have a claim and the insurance company says, I'm sorry, we don't cover that because you didn't read on page 406, subparagraph D, that we exempt that out. I'd rather go with the LLC. Who else had a question?
When you have multiple properties, do you put each in one LLC or put them all in one LLC?
Everybody hear that? If you have multiple properties, do you put them all in LLC or in individual LLCs? You know, to be honest with you, to be safe, it would be great to do LLC for each one. Here's the problem, the practical problem. The state is going to charge you $800 a year for each LLC for a franchise tax that you have to pay. So you got 5 of them, now you're paying $4 grand. The reason I like to keep them separate from a legal standpoint, I'm just being a purist here, because something happens with this property, that goes away fine. You've got these three, they're in their own LLCs. But I think for most people, it doesn't make any sense to have that multitude of entities out there. I just say, you know, put them in one if paying that kind of money is going to bother you, because the state is going to get their pound of flesh regardless. You had a question?
If there's a current property under your name, if you set up an LLC, do you need to go through and transfer all the insurance you have to redo?
You don't have to, well, that's a good question. I think you can probably modify and update your title insurance policy that was issued. The question was, if you got a property in your name now and you transfer to your LLC, what happens to the insurance, the title insurance? You should get a rider to the title insurance policy recognizing the LLC, which you now own, as being covered by the insurance policy. Remember, insurance companies are not your friend. They're usually looking, you have to have it. I mean, it's something you absolutely have to have, but they're always looking for a way to get out of something. So you get a rider to your insurance policy recognizing the fact that you transferred it to your LLC and that you have coverage on your title insurance policy. Any other questions? Yep.
I have a question again related to the LLC. You know, I know the good thing about LLC. What is the disadvantage? You know, if we put one property LLC, is there any disadvantage? For example, it will be difficult to do the mortgage, do the loan, or when we try to sell, will be some problem.
From a mortgage and a lending standpoint, there's going to be a different look at this LLC than from my legal liability standpoint. If you just form an LLC to buy Blackacre, the bank is going to say this LLC has no money. It has no financial history. So yeah, we'll make the loan to the LLC, but you have to personally guarantee it. So if the LLC doesn't fades and property goes back, you'll be responsible for repayment. That's going to be a universal. They're not going to just lend to a company that has no track record. Expect that. If you're in there long enough, maybe they'll get away from the personal guarantee. But that's how they're going to start. There's no question about it. Yep.
So if we personally have to guarantee the LLC, then when somebody sue that, our personal will be responsible to that.
I'm not sure I understood.
Okay, you just mentioned that we have to personally guarantee the LLC, right?
That's different though, because if somebody's suing you, they're suing the entity that owns the property, not the entity that guaranteed the loan. That has nothing to do with the person who's suing you. So you should be protected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I learned from the builder, actually let's say can be have 5 track in San Jose. Basically, each track is LLC. They're very smart. Basically, if a lawsuit involved for that particular track, that's it. That's all the money left. So we have to learn from the builder. One thing, and also I think Roger has mentioned about if you have like say 5 income properties, right, everywhere. So basically, what Roger suggests is each one has its own LLC. Is that right?
Yep.
That's
But
very
it becomes expensive because you have to pay the state. Now you'll have to pay one every year
Yeah.
for your individual income tax return. But here we're talking about asset protection and how to protect yourself. There's the gold standard, and if you can't afford the gold standard, then you go down a notch and maybe you put them all in the LLC. But you're trying to get away people who want to take your money and get away from that so that they have to sue the entity. The entity may or may not have any assets. But that's what you're trying to do. Other questions? Yeah.
2 questions. One is, if you have multiple properties and one of them is underwater, can you just walk away from that property and without it impacting on others? And the second one is, what if your investment property is occupied by a homeless? How do you get them out?
Well,
Occupied by who?
homeless. That's your job, Roger.
You get a guy named Bubba. Okay, the answer to the first question is if you've got multiple properties, one is underwater, you short sale or you foreclose it, unless you've cross-collateralized. This is a legal term, but if you have both properties secured by the same deed of trust, then you got a problem. But if you got a loan, there's one deed of trust on Blackacre, and you got a loan and there's one deed of trust on Greenacre, and Blackacre goes by, the bank can't go after Greenacre. Okay? Now, if you've given a lien on both those properties for both those loans, then you got a problem. That's called cross-collateralization, giving more collateral than just one piece of property for the repayment of the loan. That creates a legal problem for you. And then get the bums out. Well, sometimes the police will help you. If you say, the guy broke into my house and he's there and I can't get him out, sometimes they'll roust him out. Depends on what police department it is. If you can't get the police to assist you, then you got to do the legal process to get them out. Because what you can't do in California, as stupid as this may sound, is you can't use force and you can't use self-help. I had this case in Texas years ago. Texas is a very different state than California. And I was telling him, Texas has similar laws about landlord and tenant. I said, you know, you got to do this and you got to do that. And he was a good old boy, and he said to me, I'm not going to say exactly the words he said to me, but he said, I'm going to go over there and throw that son of a bitch right off on his ass. If he comes back into that house, I'll punch him. I said, well, you can do that. The problem is, he can sue you, right? You've opened yourself up to a lawsuit, so you got to go through the process. Now, the process is not that onerous because it goes very fast in court. You file the lawsuit, the other party has 5 days to respond, the court sets a trial within a couple of weeks. And then the guy's not going to show up, the homeless guy is not going to show up. The problem you're going to have with the homeless guy is not somebody who's holding off not paying rent. He may just light your place on fire or trash it. That's my first call would be to the police and try to get them to intercede on your behalf. And if If he's not a good talker and can't say why he's there for any good reason, police will probably throw him out. Yeah.
So Roger, I want your advice here.
You're on the clock.
Investment for the IO house, the property, but currently was occupied by tenant. Tenant maybe 3 years didn't pay anything, take advantage of the tree. So is that good? You should purchase, continue to go, or just give up? Sounds like a bank doesn't really want to get too much involved.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. You're trying to
No,
buy.
I said by IO property, right? But this house is occupied by some tenant occupied property. So is that what's your advice?
Oh, you're trying to sell your house, but it's
No,
occupied.
you want to buy a
Oh, you want to buy it, but
property.
it's occupied by a tenant.
Tenant
Oh,
occupied.
okay. Generally, the law says that the tenant has rights that are inferior to the bank if the bank forecloses. That doesn't help you because you're selling it. If the bank has a long-term, if you've got a long-term lease with your tenant, then the new owner is going to have to honor that lease as long as the tenant's paying his rent.
He's trying to buy.
You want to buy, and
Right.
you're going to take subject to the tenant. Now, the tenant has a 30-day notice. He's on a month-to-month. Then what you want to do is tell the seller, I want you to give this tenant notice, so that by the time we close escrow, it's free and clear, tenant's out, I buy the property. That's the way to solve your problem. Make it his problem. But if you close escrow and he's still in there, then you got to deal with it. Because you can't throw him out on the sidewalk any more than the owner could.
Just make sure before you close the escrow, the guy is out. Otherwise, it's your problem.
Yes, and if he's got a long-term lease, you want to know that up front. Because if he has a lease for a year, you're probably going to be bound by that year lease. So investigate that carefully if you're buying income property and you know that somebody's occupying it. Any other questions?
Yeah. I have a tenant, he is a foreclosure for some other property. He rent my house, and I received some foreclosure notice. Is there any impact for this, for my renting?
You have a tenant who had his property foreclosed, now he's renting from you.
Yeah.
Doesn't have any impact on you. He may be getting
Because
foreclosed.
I got some foreclosure notice from the government, say he's in something foreclosed.
Oh, was it addressed to you or was it addressed to him? Was it addressed to...
Notice is for me.
Oh, the notice is for you.
Yeah.
It may be a notice that says if your house is in foreclosure, we have programs that can help you. A lot of times those aren't from the government. They're from solicitors who are trying to get you to pay them to do something for them.
Not that.
Yeah. But no, I don't see how, unless, if you're making your mortgage payment, you're not going to get that notice. It has no bearing on you. Okay? Anybody else? Yeah.
Only for the income producing property, in reality, what's the likelihood? I'm an engineer, I'm talking about probability. Okay.
No, you're an engineer, and I've had enough engineer clients. You want an absolute yes or no answer. I know how you guys are.
Yes, everybody likes income producers. Everybody wants extra income.
Sure.
But in the meantime, when you think about the lawsuit, that makes the whole thing change. Sounds like you're in trouble. When you put in the LLC, you're saying, oh, you're protected. We're saying, just give them back property. And now you're talking about, if I have 5 or 6, you said, okay, if you cannot afford $800 each, put them all in one. Then the chance is you're going to give them 5.
Well, let me back up by saying, look, I'm a lawyer, so I'm looking at ways to protect you.
What are you doing?
But I don't think you should ever be frightened about buying property. I'm just telling you, when you do, look out for these things. Protect yourself. Because you live in a society where everybody thinks somebody owes them something. Something happens, they trip over the sidewalk. That's your problem. Oh yeah, you don't even own the sidewalk. It's maintained by the city now. But you're going to have those issues, but I wouldn't be frightened away from it. If you got insurance and you protect yourself, you can fight them. Most of these people who bring these kinds of lawsuits don't have any money. You get an aggressive attorney, you can get rid of them. Because they don't have any money to pay their attorney.